now beginning to record what Professor Vamik is going to say, and we will put it online for those who are not able to be here today. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you again. You have something to say? No. Thank you for inviting me here. We don't have much time. I will. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So I don't need to use that.
No, for those online.
Huh?
For those online.
Oh, I see. I have to use this. Okay. Start again. We don't have much time. There's so many aspects of children, some of them much far away from my expertise. I visited many locations around the globe since how many years? 40 years or so, and met many children. And so they were hurt, traumatized by wars or warlike situations. So I'm going to talk about large group identity. It is an important part of knowing about children because if you don't pay attention to that, sometimes they don't listen to you. Just a while ago, Mr. Mayor and Carmen, I was joining them to have a cup of coffee, and we were talking about this young lady in her early teens who was Georgian, Republic of Georgia. She lived in Abkhazia, and after the Soviet Empire collapsed, Republic of Georgia became independent, but Abkhazians said, oh, we want to be independent too, identity, you see? And there was a fight between Abkhazians and Georgians, and Abkhazian Georgians had to escape, come to Tbilisi. And I studied a young girl there for 5 years. And I was just telling them that they were placed in a former Soviet fancy hotel. Now look like a garbage dump, of course. 3,000 people in one hotel, can you imagine? And there was a beautiful lake next to this hotel. And I would ask this girl, why don't you go and swim summertime? And she would say, no. I used to swim at Black Sea. I cannot swim at this lake because it doesn't belong to me. That's what I mean by identity. The people have identities. And in war times, identities are like, I am Polish, I am Sunni Muslim, I am communist, I am Basque, I am Catalan. Tens of thousands or millions of people, they will never see each other most of the time. They share certain kind of sentiments, language, different nursery rhymes, different flags, and different historical events. And that is large group identity. And it is extremely important to know this element in treating or finding good things for kids, because nowadays, as you know, so many of them are refugees, escaped from different countries, they have language problems, etc., etc. So my expertise, if there's such a thing, is on traumatized kids due to their large group identity. Okay? Is that clear what I'm going to talk about? By the way, you're going to ask questions later on, but if you do not understand what I'm saying or you have something to say, please raise your hand so that we can have a conversation, okay? So, is it clear what I'm going to talk about? All right. I go to many places and they tell me, oh, where did you see kids? So let me just tell you what areas I work with kids. Cyprus, I'm originally a Cypriot Turk, but went to United States in 1957, but I still go to Cyprus, and as you know, there were Turks and Greeks killing each other, okay? Most interesting one was in Tunisia when PLO was exiled. Yasser Arafat was exiled to Tunisia. They had a orphanage for Palestinian kids. Most of them did not even know who were their parents. They were killed by Israelis or others. And I worked in Estonia. I worked in the Republic of Georgia. I worked in South Ossetia with kids. And also I worked in Kuwait with children. Okay? After Saddam Hussein left. Suddenly somebody talking. I'm not alone. Okay? All right, somebody talking there. All right. So, I'm going to tell you about child development, part of child development. They asked me, what do you do for children? And I do not know the answer. Why? It's very simple. It depends on the circumstances. Where do I go? What's going on there? What are the practical things? Some of them behind bars, some of them lost their parents, some of them were babies, they did not even know whose parents were. So many practical things, legal things, medical things, God only knows. And so without knowing specific things, what can you do at the location is very difficult. So since I'm a medical man, I have to do diagnosis first. I diagnose the situation, and accordingly, I say something. But wherever they are, there are certain factors that you have to consider. And this is, Walter and I were discussing this morning. We cannot look at a 14-year-old child and 2-year-old child in the same way. Their developmental history make them perceive things differently. So we are talking about importance of knowing psychological development of children. And I'm talking about psychoanalytic developmental findings, in depth. How is a child's mind, how it develops, what kind of processing it goes through as he or she goes up the stairways to become a teenager. What is the psychology of passing through adolescence? It's extremely important. So those kind of things is very important. And other thing that is, I'm not going to discuss that, but this is very important. And the other thing is, what is identity is important. So anybody wants to tell me what is identity? Anybody? No? Well, I'm a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. If you come and lie on my couch, maybe after a week or so, I make up a map in my mind about your internal world. I say, oh, I think multiple problems, the father did this and the mother did this. That is my making something about your character, about your personal organization. Identity is not something like that. Identity, individual perceiving who he is or who she is a subjective feeling, identity, okay? And I'm not talking about group identity yet. I'm talking about individual identity. And it gets connected also with individuals' large group identity. And I want to tell you how it gets connected. Now, when I was starting my profession, we used to talk about an autistic phase of children, meaning they didn't know a thing. You know what I mean? They were just, for first month or so, they didn't comprehend something. You know, the science is so important. There are so many scientific studies now, which again, I'm not going to count, but I can count if you want me to. Do you know that from the very beginning there is a psychobiological something in human beings and they know Venus. They know who they belong. Venus. Let me give you one example of it. I taught in Finland more than any other place on earth. And there's a guy there who calls me as his cousin. He's my age, Johannes Lehtonen. And Finns do not go around and talk loudly. They're very shy, but they have done the most important work about this. Let's say that many ladies in this room, you just had a baby, and I put you in a room, okay? And I put into another room 10 newborn babies, okay? You don't see them. You're in another room, but you're connected with wires and so on. And all these kids start crying. You don't know when your baby's crying, correct? But when your baby cries, you don't know consciously, but your brain goes crazy. You understand? So mother-child has a Venus. Now we know this, and there are fascinating research, but it will take me 1 hour to tell you, so I'm not going to tell you. So children then slowly develop, and they go through separation, individuation. They separate themselves from familiar other. Like child and mother is just like a unit. When I say mother, anybody does with mother and figure. It's a two-some relationship. They have babies. And around 2.5, 3, then relationship change. And by this time, they have identification. I'm going very fast. Children identify the way they do things. If you're in Innsbruck and you're farmed and so on, whatever your mother and father is doing, then you do things the same way and understand same way. But same time, you also identify with prejudices. There are people that your mother and father do not belong to. They are different. They're tourists, whatever. You know those things. Okay? And we know about identification. What we did not know much about was the opposite one. That is what adults put into children as they grow up, what they deposit in children. After the Holocaust, people were studying the Holocaust victims, or in Germany, they were studying next generation and so on. And they were very hesitant to do these studies. And as time passed by, we learned that adults, without giving actual information, they deposit things in kids. They deposit historical events, they deposit their hurt selves, and they say, okay, you grow up and do my grieving and mourning for me, you grow up and take revenge for me, you grow up and don't be humiliated like me. Those kind of things happen to children, if they're living with their parents, of course. Okay? And what is deposited? Imagine that a group of people, let's say now Syrians or wherever, let's say the 1 million people traumatized because of their identity. Because of their identity. There are different kind of traumas. If there's earthquake, who do you blame? Who do you blame if there's earthquake? God? Well, you cannot blame God. If you're in America, somebody will say, because of homosexuals, we are doing something, God was angry, or something like that. Stupid things. Come on. But if they kill you because your identity, then you have somebody to blame. And in those times, even you suffer you hold on your identity. Number one thing is to hold on your identity. Did you know that? People do wars and all this stuff because of their identity. You see? If you bring, let's say, Russians and Estonians for a dialogue, and as soon as little Estonia people, so to speak, humiliate Russians, second guy in Duma starts saying, we saved whole Europe from Mongols. So they go back to history. If you're Milosevic and you want to recreate great Serbia, you go back 100 years back and you want to recreate Battle of Kosovo and build a monument and get rid of all the Muslims and kill all the Bosniaks. You see, or let me just tell you what do I mean by identity. I told you I am from Cyprus and I live in America, but I used to go to Cyprus. And there was a guy who was kind of a friend of mine. I never talked to him about politics. And he was the president. So I would go to his office and have coffee and so on. And telephone rings. And from a village from the north side of Cyprus. Previously, it was a Greek village. And after 1974 war, all the Greeks left, they went to south, and Turks came from the south, and they were replaced in this village. Okay? And the telephone said, my God, villagers are burning the blankets. Government had given them blankets because winter was coming. So it's not logical. Why would you burn your blankets? So I said, get me a taxi. Let me go to this village and find out. It took me 5 minutes to figure out. I went to the coffee shop and I learned that in their minds, blankets were made from garments left by Greeks before they left and went to the south of the island. And so nighttime, these people, Turkish people coming from the south, they did not want the enemy garment to touch their body. You understand what identity means? So this kind of things happen, and the kids, without knowledge, they learn that they're others. They're others. And then this becomes crystallized. Around age 4, it becomes crystallized. How? Let me go back to Cyprus again and give you an example. Can you imagine me 4 years old? Come on, try. I supported I had blonde hair, I had blue eyes, and my grandmother and my mother taking me to a farm, like farmland around here, okay? And assume that this is a Greek farm, okay? What do they have at the Greek farm? Piglets, little baby pigs. What do you think I would do? I want to go touch them. I want to love the pigs. What would my grandmother say? My Muslim grandmother. What would she say? That's dirty. You see, Muslims don't eat pigs. You see, don't touch it. So I learned that there are symbols that belong to me, and there are real others who are not familiar others. They are other others. Okay? So from early childhood on, we learn that there are others, there are identities, and you learn what is our identity, and after we go through adolescent passage, you can never give up your large group identity that you learn in your childhood. You can be like me because I travel all around the world and I've kind of figured out that everybody, everywhere is the same. All human beings are the same. So I belong to humanity, okay? But not true. When I go to Cyprus and there's some problem between Greeks and Turks, I become a Cypriot Turk. You see what I mean? So prejudice is normal. That is what I want to tell you, because sometimes there are these people, not you, some locations I go, and they're trying to make lovey-dovey relationship with the kids from different backgrounds. And so that is very deadly. Don't do that. Because they have to hold on their identities. Lovey-dovey threaten their identity. Okay? I'll give an example of that too. Because there is prejudice from the very beginning of life. First is about unfamiliar other. You start at age 8, maybe now new studies show it starts maybe age 6 months, not 8 months. Let me explain to you what happens. If there's a baby in a crib, and you, some of you, many of you have seen babies, if it's yours or your relatives or your neighbors, and you go to a baby who is less than 6 months old, and if the baby is very comfortable, you smile and do like this. What the baby do? Baby smiles back and says, If I put a mask on me, a smiling mask, and do that, baby smiles. If I do at age 8, if I put a mask, a smiling mask, and do like that, baby screams, scared. Now baby knows there are others. Okay? So the prejudice, that is normal prejudice. But after 4 years old, after they know symbols outside and so on, prejudice remains forever. So you in the long run, when you have kids from different groups get together, please keep in mind child development, that there is normal prejudice, there is normal identity, there is normal LargeGroup identity, so that you do not make plans to push them to be lovey-dovey. Is that clear what I'm saying? For example, you know, they're Fulbright scholars. You know about Fulbright? I was a Fulbright scholar in Vienna for 4 months. I lived in Vienna in 2006. That's what Carmen came to my life. I got to know her. Fulbright was a senator, politician. And after he died, his wife wanted to honor him. And they would take young Cypriot Turks and young Cypriot Greeks and take them to Massachusetts and keep them in a camp, lovey-dovey way, for 3 months. And then she would come and tell me that was fantastic. She got the Turkish children and Greek children together, and they loved each other. They played football and so on. Even girls liked the Turkish boys, and Turkish boys liked Greek girls and so on. Then summer would come, and you know, summertime, I used to go to Cyprus. I would go to Cyprus, and as soon as I went to Cyprus, what would happen? My sister would call me every day. Hey, brother, so-and-so called me, and her son or her daughter was in Massachusetts, and now he or she is perceived as a traitor by other group. Please see them. So you be very careful about this. So I came up with the idea called Swiss cheese border. I guess it's correct. I mean, in America, when I go and buy Swiss cheese, when you cut it, there are holes in it, right? Slide. So when you bring kids from different groups, keep in mind a Swiss cheese border. Maintain it until they get accustomed to each other. What does it mean? Since there are holes, I can be with you lovey-dovey, but when I want to hold on my own identity or LargeGroup identity, I go back. But there is a visible actual border, but it is with holes. Don't remove the border completely. Is that understood what I'm saying? Yes? Okay. Now, since I don't have much time, I want to tell you another concept that you have to consider when you have kids together. especially kids from different places, and kids who were traumatized or their parents traumatized. Okay? And that is grieving and mourning. It is a psychobiological thing. When we lose something, we grieve. There is no such a thing that you don't do mourning. You say you don't do mourning, I don't believe you. You do mourning, but you don't know it. Okay? So another thing that instructors and so on should learn how children mourn, because children mourn differently at different ages. Let me tell you about adult mourning, and then we talk about children mourning. Let's say that I have this person, I have a long relationship with this person, can be a parent, maybe a lover, maybe a student, whatever. I invested on this. As an adult, I have a mental double of this. What do you mean by, I'm using non-technical words. Like, let's say if you and I have a relationship, and you go to your room and I go to my room, I still have your image in my mind. And if I have a very long relationship with you, I have many images of you in my mind. See what I mean? I keep it, and I relate to all those images. Supposedly you die, but your mental double is still in my mind. You follow me? I mean, everybody loses person, so that is something that we all know. Somebody that was important to you, grandmother, grandfather, somebody, or even a child, and I mean, horrible thing if a child dies. But you have a mental double of that person. And mourning means to lessen the relationship with this mental double. For a year or so, you constantly remember, and you have relationship with this mental double. And the mental double slowly lets you go, and then you still remember, but not every minute, so you're not busy with it. That is adult mourning. Okay, I'm not talking about initial pain, crying and so on. I'm talking about relationship, energy. Okay. If you are a baby, you don't have stable mental doubles. In fact, if you are having small children, you would like for them to have stable objects, stable people, so they can learn how to develop mental doubles. If they're 4 or 5 years old, their mental doubles get connected with what they expect from mother and father, whoever you are. If they pass adolescent passage, mental double becomes okay. So mental doubles are talking to me. Mental doubles talk to you, so you have to, when the kids come to you, you figure out what kind of mental doubles they are doing. And if they are refugees, I'm going to stop now so we can have a dialogue. If they are refugees, and especially after they are teenager, after they pass through adolescent passage, find out if they have some item they're holding on as a link to their past, as a link to Syria, as a link to something, as a link to grandfather, as a link to parents who died. I call such things linking objects. Okay? And they may be stupid things. Do not take it away from them, because that is so important for them. Is it understood? It can be like in Tunisia, there was a young man, age 17, has been at this orphanage for so long, and he was a captain of the football team in this orphanage. And I suddenly realized that whenever he played soccer and kicked that goal, all the other kids, including 5-year-old one, they would run to him and they would rub his lower part of his leg. See, be curious about that. Why? Everybody, 50 kids would come and rub him. So I spent a lot of time with this young man. I wrote this case, by the way. You can read it. He was a Palestinian, and he saw his parents killed. He was hiding with his uncle behind a rock, and he saw his uncle, his parents killed, other uncles, all relatives were killed in front of him. Can you imagine? He was a latency age boy. An uncle took him, and then he ended up at this orphanage. He could not recall images of parents. As years passed. What he recalled was that when everything was fine in this family, he had gone to a picnic, and grandmother was making soup, and he stepped into hot soup, burned his part of his leg, and there was a scar over here. The scar was his linking object. It linked him to Palestinianness. It linked him to his family. And it became a linking object for all kids in this orphanage. See? So pay attention to this kind of things. Okay. What I said to Walter is that psychological developmental issues should be part of training, because there are so many aspects of these kids that you see. But at the bottom of it, if there's important information about mourning and identity and so on, then you can develop more psychologically informed projects for them. Okay? Is this enough? So I should just introduce you to some of the concepts, and I think it would be much better if we have a dialogue. Okay? I can give you more examples of the concept I presented, but let's have a dialogue first, and if time comes, I'll give you more information. Yes, please.
I'm not sure whether I understood.
Just 1 second.
One of your claims, which is that after the age of 4,
yes,
prejudices won't change.
I cannot hear you.
So after this, I'm not sure whether I understood the claim you made about prejudices.
Prejudice means
not changing after the age of 4 anymore.
Yeah.
So that is the question, and I would like just to say why I asked this question, because if you made that claim, I find it very difficult to believe. When you asked how would you define identity,
yes,
I would define it as the answers you give to the question who I am.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And there's more than one answer.
Yes.
And those answers constantly will change.
Yes.
In life, of course.
Yes.
So, so if there's anything static, anything which won't ever change,
yes,
because it was basically somehow written on your hard disk,
yes,
before the age of 4.
Yes.
So I would rather like to discuss this.
Well, let me start. You're very important because I'll explain to you. Oh, ask me what is my identity. Oh, I'm a psychoanalyst. I'm a professor. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a husband. I have children. Whatever it is. I belong to this club, etc., etc. There's so many identities. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about identity that develops in childhood. That includes also your ethnic, religious, whatever, that where you are born. They give you a certain kind of basic identity. I would call it whatever, ethnic or national or something, and that doesn't change.
Maybe why may I tell you why I I'm asking this question because
Yes.
I was born in a family which was bilingual, again in the situation south, you might know it, right? Just around the corner in the south, where there's a German minority, German-speaking minority,
Yes.
Basically defining itself as being not Italian,
Yes.
and the Italians defining themselves as not being part of the group, right?
Yes.
And, my father is Italian, my mother is a German-speaking minority,
Yes.
so I don't have this sense.
Oh, yeah, you well, oh.
So how about this?
Okay, good idea. Well, I met, you see, during Soviet times, the Soviet people would forbid everybody had the identity card, but they could not write their ethnicity or nationality on it, because you were all communists, okay? And under that kind of umbrella, let's say that South Ossetian would marry Georgians. And after Soviet Empire collapsed, you see, you're a mixture family, you see? Suddenly they're realizing that their mother is South Ossetian, their father is Georgian. And some of them were having a lot of problems. In fact, one brother was shooting against other brother. One chose to be South Ossetian, the other one chose to be Georgian.
Some might choose to go away.
Yeah. So you have a more difficult time. Same thing between Hungary and Romania. There were all this kind of issues. But basically is that there are certain things that we develop this in very early. And when I say prejudice, I do not mean bad things. You have to think about that too. See, prejudice, you think of the bad thing, and then we force people. But all I'm saying is don't force people to give up their benign, good prejudice. Let them hold their identity and have a nice, auspicious relationship with others. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It makes more difficult for them if you create a situation that everybody will be the same. Yes?
Could you define this Swiss-cheese relationship? I don't quite understand where that comes from. Obviously, like there's a boundary, and maybe that the whole creates gaps that remain invisible to others.
Yes.
But I can't quite piece it together yet. Just to elaborate a little bit.
Let's say that are you Austrian? Huh? Let's say have somebody, let's say a Catalan or whatever, Catalan and Spaniard or somebody. They are working at same place, and suddenly Catalans are screaming and yelling, and let's say assume big problems occur, and you can still be friendly, but as these hot things are going on, you have to be careful, so to speak. You understand? So daytime you can be friendly with them. You go through the halls and have a drink somewhere at the bar, but when all these things are happening, you go on the other side of your border and kind of keep a border. See what I mean? This term came to me because I don't know. I mean, he said that I never worked for UN, by the way, but I spend my life bringing together high-level enemy groups. Don't ask me how I got into that. Let's say after Soviet Union collapse, our most successful one was helping Russians to separate from Balkan Republic without killing anybody. And we were very successful. So having high-level Russians like head of Duma, Estonian parliamentarians and so on, and poets, and we See, I'm a therapist, so I don't believe in technology is amazing to me, but one push button technology doesn't change human psychology. Human psychology is very slow. So we had them for years to talk so that they could find solutions. Okay? So what I'm talking about large groups, psychology, and so on. Same thing in Cyprus. UN came and they spent, I don't know, $100 million. At least now the new woman went in there and trying to do the same thing. They said, oh, you're a small island, why don't we make all of you be one nation? That means no Swiss cheese border. You understand me? That means no border. We're going to be same. It never worked, because if you're Greek, would you give up your Greekness? I mean, my God, if I'm Greek, I go back all the way. Ooh, I would never give up my Greekness. And Turks don't have that kind of glorified by Europe time background, but they have their own background. They wouldn't give up their background. So why would you force them to be lovey-dovey? Okay? So I kept telling these people, UN people, I never worked with them. Okay?
Come and say.
Okay. Instead of spending this money making them lovey-dovey, make something that it is a Swiss cheese relationship. And anyhow, they're still doing lovey-dovey, but after 30, 40 years in Cyprus, Swiss cheese reality occurred. So borders are open, you show, nobody looks to show your paper, you go and come in, Greeks come over there, nighttime, Turkish side have casinos now, all the Greeks who want to ever get away from their wives come to north side and gamble and see whatever they do. It's Swiss cheese, but when there's some problem, they don't show. They stay on their border. There's a border, but it is Swiss cheese. That's what I meant by that. You understand? And for the kids too. For the kids too. If you put them together, again, depending on their ages, especially if they're teenagers, they become, these differences become, if they do not talk about it, become extremely crystallized in their minds. And if they perceive that the other party is saying something bad or minimizing their large group identity, they get into trouble. So have them to be friendly, have them to have all kinds of things together, but don't force them to be the same. That's what I meant. It doesn't make sense to you? Okay.
If I can ask a question, please.
Yes.
The good of the nine prejudices you talk about, and that at the age of 4, what was cemented and well seen.
The age of 4, still they don't know too much about the history or what is after adolescent passing crystallized.
Okay. So let's take the case of SOS-Children. Let's say a child comes into our care, let's say from the age of 8 or 9 or 10,
yes.
when these early identity traits have been fixed or established. How can the people taking care of these children, the new care situation now, when they change environment to another care situation, how can these traits be identified in order not to make mistakes?
Well, I mean, again, you give me a situation, and if I look at the situation, I can tell you specific things. But in general, let's say that immigrants from many countries come to us, okay? And you have a group of kids that you're taking care of them, and let's say some of them are Turkish immigrants, and at home, let's say that most of the Turkish immigrants, they go to more religious things, and they're more holding their identity in a funny way, because that identity is threatened for refugees. Most of the people go backward. And now the whole world, by the way, whole world, now we are living in a civilization of who are we now? Who are we now occurs when there's a revolution, a leader is killed, there is a war, you say, who am I? But technology and globalization is all kind of good things about it. Also made people, oh, there's different people. So we are entering a who are we now civilization. And this brings a lot of politicians, a lot of politicians now in Europe and also in America. Who are we now? When they say, who are we now? Like, look at Turkey. You go back to Ottoman Empire. Trump goes back to white Americanism. I don't know what's happening in Hungary right now or Poland. You know more about what's happening in Austria. So, same kind of things happen with these kids. So that you need to consider that when you're dealing with them, that you don't force them to do something against what they're learning at home. Depending if you have time and so on, there's so many factors in taking care of kids, so many practical things. But at the end, all of them also get contaminated with psychology. And this is why I'm suggesting that child psychology, developmental psychology, should be part of training or information of people who are making programs for the children.
Thank you, Professor.
Louder, please. I cannot hear you. Am I?
Is it louder?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. There are a lot of societies with quite diverse populations.
Yes.
Myself, I'm a South African.
Yes.
I think, for your expertise area or study area, I think that's quite interesting.
Yes.
Country to look at in terms of identity.
Yes.
But my question is more also thinking of a country like South Africa.
Yes.
Since 1994,
yes.
One of the main objectives in South Africa to do that transition to
yes.
a peaceful society
yes.
was actually creating a shared identity.
Yes.
And even in South Africa today, a number of years later, this topic is again strongly coming to the fore, because it's exactly like you say, there's been some difficult times, and people jump through their cheese balls, but the different sides, identity, and this critical question is coming up again: how do we avoid that from happening?
Yes.
And work on the shared identity.
Well,
this is particularly important for children,
yes.
as that's the future of the country. So, in creating this shared identity, in your opinion, what are the critical things to focus on?
Well, South Africa was what happened in South Africa was psychologically informed. Desmond Tutu is a wonderful man. He tells good jokes. His eyes are very bright. He was a member of INN, International Negotiation Network. After Jimmy Carter finished his presidency, he developed a group of people, Nobel Peace Prize people and so on. They would come to Atlanta and meet and discuss humane things. And long story, so I became also a member of this group. This is how I got to know Desmond Tutu. I had the honor to go to South Africa and give the main speech for the 75th birthday of Desmond. Okay. So many big people, and Desmond walks like that, and Desmond came, and we had cocktails and so on. And next day, perpetrators and victims of Truth and Reconciliation came to the meeting too. You know what happened? They almost killed each other. They were very angry at each other. And Desmond Tutu knows what I'm going to tell you. What he did was he made a monument from Truth and Reconciliation, which was like to deal with societal mourning. You see, after a disaster, we build up monuments, marble or metal. And these monuments, we put our unfinished mourning processes in them, and as soon as the conflict starts, what people do? First thing, they go and break the monuments. You know that? So Desmond built a monument by doing adult mourning, because people listen to what happened. Mourning means you go over the mental doubles of this thing, and you listen and you listen, and you but it not help individuals. It helped the society. So a lot of more mourning process is going to take place in South Africa. I spent some time in townships in South Africa, and I can give you the name of a German lady that you should invite, who does most work. And it will take some time. And there too, you're going to have species borders among certain sections. It's not going to be one South African everybody. It's going to be different kinds of Africans living happily with species borders. Okay?
Again, I have a similar question. I think he also didn't get the point about creating this common identity. Just thinking about Rwanda, for example. I'm not an expert in that country, but it seems that they overcome this division between Hutus and Tutsis in a quite limited time. So the politicians and governments tried to create a common identity, and everybody is from Rwanda, and this division. It seems to work from our side. I don't know the details. So, what are the factors? How to create a common identity? Because nothing is easier to have this divided society. That's clear for all of us.
I never worked in Rwanda, so no. Unless I work and diagnose, I cannot really say what happens there. So I never worked in Rwanda. I was invited to work there, but for some reasons I could not. But I know some of my colleagues who work in Rwanda. In Rwanda, when things happen, one group called Kafarts. Kafart means insect who walk around in the bathrooms. So you dehumanize people. So whatever you say to me, those things are not forgotten. But this is now, I'm not telling you because I know, because I never worked there. I'm telling you from my other experiences. Okay? So people, they should continue to take some time. I don't know what they are doing, UN doing or so on, but they are doing something so that they're not killing themselves, but it will take some time to settle, and if it's settled, it is settled like it's nobody kills anybody. They have nice, very nice species borders. Maybe same kind of thing happened in Rwanda, but I cannot tell you because I do not know. I have not been there. But it takes some time. And Also, let me tell you some also bad things. Something happens in history and some stupid leader or somebody may stimulate and history comes back. The best place for you to learn about human nature is to go back to South Africa. Kruger Park. You go to Kruger Park, which is a huge place, but it's who rules Kruger Park? Animals, elephants and lions and so on. And if you take enough time to watch those animals, you get so jealous of them. They do exactly what humans do, but they do it under more, what you call it, more, an elephant doesn't, like they have Oedipus complex, for example. Driving in Kruger Park and suddenly smells so, and you ask the driver, what's happening? What does it smell? It's testosterone. Did you know that? Testosterone smells? How would I know? There was a father elephant with mother elephant, teenager son or daughter, and a baby elephant, and a younger elephant comes, male elephant, having Oedipal issues, comes towards us and pulls out a tree, and mother elephant takes her babies and slowly moves away and looks at this father elephant and young elephant. They start hitting at each other, but they don't kill each other. Human beings, when we develop our brains, we have been, see, we don't like to agree with that, but history doesn't lie. We are killers. Human beings are killers. We have been killing each other since the beginning of history. And unfortunately, right now, again, I'm very pessimistic and very sad about what's developing in the world. So, Rwanda, I do not know. Any other questions?
Yeah, if I can ask you more questions, please.
Yes.
Perhaps you share with us a story where in projects you participated in, perhaps where it was possible to let children realize that trauma and experiences from conflicts can also be positive influences in their development.
Well, again, I can give you my own example how I made the Russian children in Estonia feel great. Okay? Anybody here have been to Estonia? It's a little place, Baltic Republic, Lithuania, Estonia. Okay. Estonians lived under others centuries. Maybe 30, 40 years ago, for a few years, they were the state of Estonia, and then Russians took over, and they were Soviet, and suddenly they become independent, okay? In Estonia, every third person is a Russian, at least a Russian speaker. Can you imagine? And suddenly, without any experience of running a country, overnight we are independent. Imagine this. Really imagine how crazy it was. Suddenly, overnight, you are independent, you are going to run a country, but every third person is still Russian, who doesn't know a word of Estonian, but Estonians know Russian. Okay? This is one of the problems. Okay. So, how do you get, Russians cannot go to Russia because they don't have space for them, so they're going to stay in Estonia, but every third person is Russian, and the day before they were lost, and the next day they're supposed to learn Russian, Estonian, and be part of Estonia. It's horrible to do. So we asked the president and the government to give us the authority to start a school system, elementary school system in Müstame. Müstame is a section like a village in town. And they said, okay. But we got the teachers, and Russian teachers and Estonians. I'm not going to tell you all my technique. So Estonia did not want Russian kids to be in elementary school with Estonian kids. Let's say there are 20 Estonian kids here, and if there are some Russian kids also in the same class, all Estonians, even the most intelligent ones, believe that within few months all Estonian kids would learn Russian, but no Russian kid will learn Estonian. Because Estonians' identity was they lived under others. So they perceived that four Russian kids will dominate 16 Estonian kids. My logic told me that would not happen. So we were given authority to start school. We had 16 Estonian kids and 4 Russian kids in classes, elementary school. Can you imagine that? Within a year, these 4 Russian kids learned Estonian. They became their parents' interpreters when parents went outside to Boston, because now they are talking Estonian. And every Russian wanted to send their school to our system. Okay? So we went back to Estonian government, and they said, this is fantastic. So they made a system according to what we told them. And it worked. And what happened was Russian kids, little baby kids, elementary school kids, got such a tremendous self-esteem. Okay? So you have to think about the psychology of the situation. So that is the most successful one. Also, is written, by the way. He wrote everything we have done. So if you want to read it, it's somewhere. Don't ask me which book, because I don't remember their names. Okay. Is that clear? Where else I did kids together? That's it. That's the most important. The kids give different, like I was talking last night. Saddam Hussein comes to Kuwait, and kids, small kids, see their parents being spat on, humiliated, and so on. There was the most fascinating. And the kids, after Saddam Hussein moved out, we went to elementary schools and interviewed the kids. You don't interview, just like, you just sit there and talk. You spend all day. I had my team. And what we realized was that all the kids were identifying with Saddam Hussein because their father were humiliated. So they wanted to identify with aggressor. So you need to know the psychological aspects of different situations. Most identity-related, which was, in a sense, if you consider it bad or good, very bad one, was in Tunisia when they had, do you remember, you were still young, Shabra and Shatila incident? In Lebanon, 2 Palestinian refugees were in Lebanon, and Christian Lebanese came in supposedly with Israeli help and killed thousands of people in the Sudan. I don't know if you remember. Sabra, S-A-B-R-A, and Shatila, S-H-A-T-I-L-A. If you go and look at it, this was the biggest, many years ago, trouble. And they found 5 babies alive. Babies born maybe a week ago or a month ago. And these kids were in an orphanage when they were 5, 6 years old. They had no idea who were their parents. No idea. Okay? And Yasser Arafat was bringing them fruits wherever he travels around, and he named them after Arafat, Fatima Arafat, Muhammad Arafat, and so on. These kids, when they were together, they were just like normal kids playing. You see, they developed a group identity. They were all, because everybody perceived them as symbol of this big problem. They were normal. But if you separated one and wanted to talk to one, with my interpreter, of course, he or she would go crazy, would tear down the whole walls and do all kinds of things. So group identity thing you can learn here. And all these orphanages, they were being treated extremely well, very well. They had nurses and so on. But beneath this, what they were giving them was Palestinian identity to put them together. And when you listen, what we heard was everybody wanted to grow up, be a pilot, and go and bomb Israel. See? So you have to pay attention to this kind of thing I'm telling you. But please don't misunderstand me. There are so many different aspects of taking care of kids. This is why unless you tell me where it is and unless I know that, I cannot tell you what are the first things you have to do. But each place, you have to pay attention to mourning processes, large group identity processes, child developmental issues, and if it's something bad developing identity-based, then you have to deal with it. But otherwise, allow them to have their own large group identity if it's going to give them self-esteem. Don't make it threaten. Yes, please.
How integral is language to identity? Often with assimilation and things like this, a child or a person will have their mother tongue.
Yes.
And then the first thing that happens is you need to learn.
Yes.
The example that you
Yes.
described earlier with the Russian and the Estonian.
Yes.
So going back to that example, how was the Russian identity of these children actually maintained that they still had, although they were now Estonian?
Well, you see, all parents wanted them to learn Russian.
To learn Russian?
Russian, because parents could not speak Russian.
Okay.
And they're staying in Tallinn, and now Tallinn is Estonian city, everything has to be Estonian, so to speak. So Russian mothers and fathers, they chose to send these 4 kids. They were, in a sense, giving also the same task to the children. It would be all right for you to learn Russian. I mean, to learn Estonian. Yeah. And learning language itself doesn't mean that you give up your identity.
Please, if I can understand better, the story you shared with Palestinian children, you said when one of them is taken out of the group, he or she goes crazy. Why?
Because they evolved them. You see, it's so important for small babies to have a stable object, we call it, a stable person, a mothering person. Okay, and instead of that was not available to them. And what they did as a mothering person, there are different people took care of them, but mothering personness was large group identity. They were all victims. And therefore they did not develop individual identity. They developed a large group identity. And when they were all together, they were fine. But they did not know how to behave as an individual. I mean, you see things like there are also statues. Do you know about statues, living statues in war zones? I'll tell you one story. This guy now is 48 years old. I met him when he was 49 now. I met him 2 years ago when he was 47. Since he was about 10 years old. So 37 years later, I met him, and I plan this year to meet him again and write his, if he gives me permission, to write his whole life story. Again, when I talk about a country like Tutus or Hutus or Turks, Greeks, Estonians, and so on, please, I'm not blaming any group, so don't misunderstand me, okay? All of us do something bad sometimes. So there was a, not really friend, but I knew a guy who was a very famous poet in northern Cyprus. They did not have northern Cyprus. In Cyprus there was a poet, and he would write poems and so on. Whenever I visited Cyprus, sometime I would meet him. And let me go back. When the Turks and Greeks were fighting, he happened to be on the Turkish side of Nicosia, but his wife and his mother were left in a village. Greeks come and conquer them, and they take these two women as prisoners. But she's pregnant. She's delivering a baby. So they take her to a hospital. She delivers the baby. And they put the baby in a nursery, but nursery is also a morgue. They're killing each other. Many, the Turks that they killed, they put in this room. So the baby is in a room with dead bodies. This baby's first thing he sees are dead bodies. The baby doesn't know it, of course. And the English nurse passing by sees this and takes this baby away from this morgue, so to speak. Anyhow, they transfer the baby. So the father started writing a poem every day to my son. They named him War. In Turkish word, savaş, meaning war. So Mr. War grows up, but everybody knows about his history. And every day there's a poem about him. So he develops a symptom. Symptom is that he's like, if he scratches himself like this, he feels like he's scratching a stone or something. You see, all kind of things develop with these kids. You follow me? And since I don't have many time, I'm not going to tell you a story. But there are statues, and that was my first statue I saw. And then I saw many other statues in other places after wars. Somehow they become symbol of what happened in their part of the world. And a lot of people know about them. And they become like a statue. And they cannot change.
Well, sorry, please, but a question from the next side so that we do justice to them. For many children in the SOS care, there is no clarity of information who their parents are.
Yes.
From a psychological point of view, what is important from your own point of view in the bringing up of these children to help them build their identity?
Well, again, it depends on the situation. Some places, when I worked in South Ossetia with about, 80 kids, there was not one single psychologist in South Ossetia. We brought enemy psychologists from Tbilisi to help them. So it depends on the situation, so it's very difficult. So what I'm saying is that we were discussing this morning. I'm sure you do, I don't know what you do. To me, you do an incredible job. My God. And the Carmen, she's gone, but they're doing fantastic jobs. What I'm saying is that psychoanalytic understanding of child development should be part of your training. That's one. And the other part should be about warning. What happens to losses? How to respond to losses? So those kind of things will be helpful for instructors when such things become important in certain cases. That's what I'm saying simply. Okay?
own understanding. If I listen to you, and also thinking of SOS-Children's religious work worldwide, and one of the things that are very important for us as an organization is that children are able to keep their roots, or to grow up in an environment in which they maintain their roots. So I'm just stating this to you. So if we are thinking of wanting to create a peaceful future for the society, but also for the individual concerned, what I take from you is that it is quite important to maintain this Swiss cheese wall, or to learn children how to cope with that Swiss cheese wall, how to get through those holes back and forth. I mean, this is just what I'm saying from my own experience, that I think in a healthy way. Because of course it's not healthy for children to get stuck, or individuals to get stuck here.
They become bicultural or multicultural that way.
Correct. And also getting stuck behind walls means that you are not able to reach out, not able to go beyond. So I mean,
this cheese makes them to slowly learn how to bicultural, multicultural. But if you make them to be lovey-dovey, you take away from the development to be more open to the world. Paradoxically.
Correct, but that also then requires individuals to respect.
The
other side. To respect another person's identity.
Absolutely.
And again, if I can just think of my own situation, I mean, one thing that people loved about Nelson Mandela is that he was always able to say that the first and only thing that binds everyone in South Africa together is the fact that you are South African. And the second thing is the fact that we all have our own root. And he used to refer to himself to say, I'm a cross. And you're an Afrikaner, and you're responsible. What binds us together is that you are South African. But in that word, I also hear that Swiss cheese walls.
Well, Mandela was psychologically, for his own reasons. I know Desmond, but Mandela psychologically extremely, for his own reason, was very good. I mean, like after the football games and so on, and we go and not football. What was it? He goes and in front of everybody, shake hands with the white sports people and so on. I mean, it was incredibly, what you say, he did this cheese thing in South Africa. But I mean, there was so much problem. Like when one of my German students, I would say, worked at the township, when I went to township, and there were schools and the girls and boys dress up nicely and they come and they dance and they stage and they dance and they sing and so on. And you have to think and you have to be shocked. So let's say that there are 10 kids, age 11 or 12, on the stage singing and dancing in the school. And you intellectually know that 8 of them, the night before, were raped. Do you hear me? 8 of them, the night before, were raped. And probably 8 of them that night also will be raped. But they're singing as if they're normal. So the chronicity of trauma, they make them dissociated. You see? They look like normal kids and so on. And we knew they were raped the night before. So again, it depends on your situation and how much money you have, how many people you have, to understand in depth the people you are helping, younger people. So I don't want to be misunderstood. This is a fantastic thing you are doing. it is depending on the situation and your money and practical sense, how much depth you need to go. And if there's possibility, then we have to pay attention to psychological issues and human developmental issues. That's what I'm saying, as simple as that. And also I'm saying is you brought it, this way you make people to more mature way to be multicultural and more getting to know the world and be less prejudicial by doing this. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Professor Vamik.
Thank you.
A nice presentation. Thank you, colleagues, for listening and being present. And I hope we're able to get one or two important models and approaches which we can adopt even in the classrooms. Because I also see some teachers here who are dealing with children from refugee parents. And I know it's also not very easy dealing with such children, or even some people working in youth programs where young people from among the refugee groups have been taken care of, especially the unaccompanied young ones. So it's also not very, very easy. I can see some of them here, they're having problems with the trauma these children or these young people suffered, and integrating those children or such young people in one program is not very easy. So I think that the models we presented, we can take time to inform ourselves more. That is very helpful, and also for our work. Thank you so much. For those of us who have access to our intranet collaboration site, we will place the recordings there. And some people from outside, if you would want to have a record of it, please drop your email. We'll feel free to forward it to you. And for information, please, this evening by 7 o'clock, Prof. Vamik will be having a discussion here with 20 professors from 4 countries in Europe. They happen to have a workshop here in Innsbruck this week, and they heard about him. They say they have been working with his models in the past 10 years, and they have not been opportunity to meet him personally. So they want to meet with him today and discuss some of these models. These are professors from Ireland, from Northern Ireland, from Georgia, from Austria, and I think also professors from England. So I think anyone who has time to come, you can come and join. So it's not a lecture, it's nothing but exchange among experts. So feel free to come. It's from 7 o'clock, it begins 7 o'clock just for 1 hour, 10 minutes. To also be in this room. So it's up, you're welcome. Thanks for being here, all the best.
Thank you. Now, how many occupational therapists? Raise hands. 1, 2, occupational therapists? Yes. Did she tell you? We're going to take pictures together. Because my wife is an occupational therapist, and today is her birthday. So presently, I'm an occupational therapist, so I'm going to send her a picture. Okay?